SCHD might just be the best dividend ETF an investor could ask for. It has good price appreciation, a great dividend, and a fantastic track record compared to the S&P 500. Some investors might even consider this as the only ETF they need to own, but it does have some downsides and we're going over 4 of them in this video. Don't worry, I give you an easy fix for all of them. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. Check out the disclaimer on your screen now. The first problem with SCHD is a lack of diversification. At any given moment, SCHD has around 100 positions, and currently 40% of the fund is concentrated in about 10 stocks, which means the other 60% is concentrated into about 90 stocks. To get a better understanding of this problem, we have to remember that the total US stock market consists of thousands of stocks, and that's just the US markets. If we concentrate our investments into just 100 of those companies, we miss out on the growth of the rest of the market. And if something happens to those 100 stocks in SCHD, or even just a few of them, our position might be in trouble. As unlikely as it is, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, because if something happens to the basket, we lose all of our eggs. There are 3 ETFs that can give your portfolio more diversity instantly. They're VTI, VOO, and VXUS. Let's start with VTI, otherwise known as the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. This ETF seeks to track the investment performance of the CRSP US Total Market Index, which represents approximately 100% of the investable US stock market. VTI is a great option because it gives you exposure to the entire US market with just one purchase. VTI has 3,945 holdings, and its top holdings include Google, Amazon, Apple, Berkshire Hathaway, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, and United Health Group. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 9.5%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $15,748.28. VTI has a dividend yield of 1.95% and an expense ratio of 0.03%. Some investors might not want the entire US market in their portfolio and would rather choose to go for the best of the best US companies. Our next ETF lets you do just that. It's VOO, also known as the Vanguard 500 Index Fund ETF. VOO is an ETF that seeks to track the investment performance of the S&P 500 Index, which is a widely recognized benchmark of the US stock market performance that is dominated by stocks of large US companies. VOO has 510 holdings, and its top holdings include Google, Amazon, Apple, Berkshire Hathaway, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, and United Health Group. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 9.88%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $16,022.61. VOO has a dividend yield of 1.63% and an expense ratio of 0.03%. Now, I know it sounds like I just repeated myself because I basically did. VTI and VOO are extremely similar in performance and their holdings, so investors choosing to buy both might be accidentally increasing their concentration instead of diversifying. I think both options are great, but no matter what you choose, it's important to remember that there are companies that exist outside of the United States as well. That's where our next ETF comes in, VXUS, also known as the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. VXUS is an ETF that seeks to track the investment performance of the FTSE Global All Cap ex-US Index, an index designed to measure equity market performance in developed and emerging markets, excluding the United States. VXUS has 7,895 holdings, and its top holdings include ASML Holding, AstraZeneca, Moelis & Company, Nestle, Novo Nordisk, Rogers Corporation, Shell, Samsung, Tencent, and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 1.9%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $10,984.80. VXUS has a dividend yield of 2.97% and an expense ratio of 0.11%. You'll notice that this ETF is more expensive to own than VTI and VOO, and also its returns are not nearly as good, but there might be value in owning it for some investors. Having all your money in US stocks puts you at risk because the world moves very quickly. As unlikely as I think it is still possible that events could play out where the US is no longer the economic power it is today. VXUS might provide investors some protection against this. Now that we're nice and diversified, our portfolio can get even better by addressing the second problem. SCHD doesn't pay a monthly dividend, it pays every 3 months, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but some investors might benefit from more frequent dividends. For me personally, seeing my dividends come in regularly keeps me motivated and also helps me stay in the markets through good times and bad. There are a ton of great monthly ETFs out there, but this one I think complements SCHD very well because it does what SCHD doesn't. SCHD has zero exposure to real estate. This ETF invests in REITs, or real estate investment trusts. This helps with diversification and with dividends. The ETF I'm talking about is SPHD, also known as the Invesco S&P 500 High Dividend Low Volatility ETF. The ETF is composed of 50 securities traded on the S&P 500 index that historically have provided high dividend yields and low volatility. The top holdings are Altria Group, AT&T, Boston Properties, Dow Inc., International Paper Company, Kinder Morgan, Simon Property Group, Horizon, Walgreens Boots Alliance, and the Williams Companies. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 5.28%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $12,930.90. SCHD has a dividend yield of 3.97% and an expense ratio of 0.3%. Now, the next two ETFs we'll go over also pay monthly dividends, but they also solve a third problem for SCHD. SCHD doesn't have a high dividend compared to some of the other ETFs out there, but be warned, with a higher dividend comes more risk. The ETF Devo has a high yield and is also known as the Amplify CWP Enhanced Dividend Income ETF. Devo is an actively managed ETF of high-quality, large-cap companies with a history of dividend growth, along with a tactical covered call strategy on individual stocks. Devo is strategically designed to offer high levels of total return on a risk-adjusted basis. Devo has 29 holdings, and its top holdings include Chevron, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan Chase, McDonald's, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, Goldman Sachs, Home Depot, and Visa. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 10.5%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $16,459.79. Devo has a dividend yield of 4.86% and an expense ratio of 0.55%. Now, a 4% dividend yield might not be exciting enough for a lot of you out there, but this next ETF goes the extra mile. Up next is JEPI, also known as the JP Morgan Equity Premium Income ETF, which is very popular to pair with SCHD. Its goal is to deliver monthly distributable income and equity market exposure with less volatility. JEPI is a covered call ETF that works through equity link notes. It uses its holdings to write options contracts, which lets the fund collect a premium through an agreement with a financial institution. This premium is how the fund is able to generate such a high yield, but of course there's more to it than that. I cover ELNs and JEPI in more detail in another video, and I'll leave that link in the description down below and at the end of the video. JEPI has 136 holdings, and its top holdings include AbbVie, Bristol Myers Squibb, Coca-Cola, MasterCard, Pepsi, Progressive, Hershey, Travelers, US Bancorp, and Visa. This ETF has an average yearly return of 12.08%. Now, JEPI has only been around since May of 2020, but if you invested $10,000 at inception, your investment would now be worth $13,810.59. JEPI has a dividend yield of 11.95% and an expense ratio of 0.35%. Our fourth and final problem with SCHD is that as good as it is, it leaves a lot of growth on the table. Long-term investors will likely benefit from the explosive growth that tech companies can have, and our next ETF will fill that void. Just look at this chart comparing the growth of SCHD against it, and you'll see that this position outperformed SCHD significantly. The ETF is QQQ, also known as the Invesco QQQ Trust, and it's an ETF that delivers exposure to companies that are at the forefront of transformative, long-term themes such as augmented reality, cloud computing, big data, mobile payments, streaming services, electric vehicles, and more. QQQ has 102 holdings, and its top holdings include Google, Amazon, Apple, Broadcom, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, Pepsi, and Tesla. This ETF has a 5-year average yearly return of 14.36%, and if you invested $10,000 5 years ago, your investment would now be worth $19,576.98. QQQ has a dividend yield of 0.73% and an expense ratio of 0.2%. Now, I recognize there are a ton of ETFs that solve a problem for SCHD, so if I didn't mention one, let me know in the comment section down below what it is. And if you're interested in learning more about JEPI, check out this video here. If you found value in this video, go ahead and click that like button, subscribe for more money, finance, and crypto content, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.